Have you ever found something that made you wonder about the past? A photo, a diary, or maybe a letter? Tonight's story is about a young woman who finds a letter that was never read. A letter that carried love, secrets, and a promise, hidden for over 50 years. This is The Last Letter. Let us begin. The rain tapped gently against the window as Clara, a 25-year-old woman, sat in her grandmother's old house. Her grandmother had passed away only a few weeks earlier, leaving Clara with a heart full of memories and a small wooden box filled with keepsakes. Clara slowly opened the box. Inside were faded photographs, a silver necklace, and at the very bottom, an old envelope. The paper was yellowed with age, the ink slightly faded. On the front, in beautiful handwriting, were the words, "To Eleanor, for your eyes only." Clara froze. Eleanor was her grandmother's name. She whispered to herself, "Grandma, you never opened this? Why?" Clara turned the envelope over in her hands. The seal was still intact. Her fingers trembled. Part of her felt guilty. This was her grandmother's private letter. But another part of her was burning with curiosity. Who wrote this? Why was it never opened? She placed the letter on the table, pacing back and forth. "No, I shouldn't. But what if it's important? What if it explains something she never told us?" The sound of rain grew heavier outside. Clara sighed deeply and placed the letter back in the box. "Not now. I'm not ready." That night, Clara couldn't sleep. The thought of the letter haunted her. When she closed her eyes, she imagined her grandmother as a young woman. Who was she back then? Did she have a secret love? A broken dream? The next morning, Clara made a decision. She wouldn't open the letter yet. Instead, she would travel to the town where her grandmother grew up. Maybe there she could find the answers she was looking for. She packed her bag, carefully placed the letter inside, and whispered, "Grandma, I'll find the truth. I promise." And so Clara's journey began. A journey into her grandmother's past, guided by a single letter, a letter that had waited decades to be read. Before we dive deeper into this story, may I ask a small favor? Please consider subscribing. It helps this channel grow. It encourages me to keep sharing real stories like this, and honestly, it means the world to me. Clara's journey began on a quiet morning. The sun was rising and the roads were damp from last night's rain. She carried only a small bag, her notebook, and, most importantly, the unopened letter. The bus slowed as it entered a small countryside town. It was peaceful, almost frozen in time, with cobblestone streets and old shops standing side by side. Children played by the fountain, and an old man sold flowers on the corner. Clara stepped off the bus and breathed in deeply. "So this is where you lived, Grandma, Eleanor." She walked slowly, her eyes wide as though she was stepping into the past. Clara entered a small cafe at the edge of town. The bell above the door jingled. Behind the counter stood an elderly woman with kind eyes. "Good morning, dear," the woman said. "You must be new here. Passing through?" Clara smiled nervously. "Not exactly. My grandmother grew up here. Her name was Eleanor Whitfield. Do you happen to remember her?" The woman's face lit up with recognition. "Eleanor Whitfield. Oh yes, I remember her. Such a bright, beautiful girl. Always writing in her notebooks, always dreaming. She used to sit right over there by the window." Clara turned to look. In the corner, sunlight poured over a small table by the glass. For a moment, she imagined her grandmother as a young woman, laughing, writing, her eyes full of hope. The woman leaned closer and whispered, "Your grandmother. She had a close friend, a man, tall, quiet, always looking at her as though the whole world disappeared when she walked into the room. But then, one day he was gone, and she never spoke of him again." Clara's heart skipped a beat. Could this man be the writer of the letter? "Do you know his name?" Clara asked. The woman shook her head. "No, but old Mr. Harris at the bookstore might remember. He knew everyone back then. You should visit him." Clara walked through the narrow streets until she found a small, dusty bookstore. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and leather. Behind the counter sat Mr. Harris, a man in his late 70s with glasses resting on the edge of his nose. Clara approached politely. "Hello. My name is Clara. I'm searching for stories about my grandmother, Eleanor Whitfield." Mr. Harris looked up slowly. His eyes softened. "Eleanor? Yes, I remember her. She was unforgettable." He paused as if lost in memory. Then he added, "There was a man. His name was Thomas. He was deeply in love with her. But fate was not kind to them." Clara leaned forward, her voice shaking. "Do you know what happened to him?" Mr. Harris sighed. "He left town suddenly. Some said he went to the city. Others believed he joined the army. But he left behind something important." Clara's pulse quickened. What was it? The old man gave a mysterious smile. "A letter." Clara's hands tightened around her bag. The letter in her possession had waited more than 50 years. And now she knew the name of the man who wrote it, Thomas. Clara now knew the name, Thomas, the man who once loved her grandmother, the man who might have written the letter that sat quietly in her bag. But names are only the beginning. What Clara needed was the story behind it. Clara leaned closer to Mr. Harris, her voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Harris, what was Thomas like?" The old man smiled faintly, his eyes drifting into the past. "Thomas was a quiet soul. Not many words, but when he spoke, people listened. He and Eleanor, they were inseparable. Everyone thought they would marry one day. He adored her. You could see it in the way he carried her books, the way he waited for her after classes." Clara's eyes widened. "Then why did he leave?" Mr. Harris sighed. "That, my dear, is a story I don't fully know. One day, he was simply gone. But I remember, Eleanor came here, sat in that very chair you're sitting in now, and cried. She never spoke of it again." Clara felt her chest tighten. She touched the letter inside her bag. Could this be the missing piece? Clara left the bookstore and wandered the streets. She passed the old schoolhouse, the park bench under the willow tree, the small bridge that crossed the river. Each place seemed to whisper with memories her grandmother once lived. She imagined Eleanor, young and laughing, walking hand in hand with Thomas. She pictured the rain falling as they promised each other forever. For a moment, Clara felt as if she was walking not just through a town, but through her grandmother's life. That evening, Clara knocked on the door of an old brick house at the end of the street. A neighbor had told her that Mrs. Green, an elderly woman, used to live next to Eleanor's family. The door creaked open, revealing a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. "Yes? Can I help you?" Clara smiled politely. "My name is Clara. I'm Eleanor Whitfield's granddaughter. I'm trying to learn about her past." Mrs. Green's eyes softened instantly. "Oh, Eleanor. Such a lovely girl. Come in, dear." Inside, the house smelled of lavender and tea. Clara sat on the sofa as Mrs. Green brought out a small photo album. She flipped through the pages and stopped at one. There, in black and white, was Eleanor, young, radiant, standing beside a tall young man with kind eyes. "That's Thomas," Mrs. Green whispered. "They were so happy together. But life can be cruel." Clara leaned forward. "What happened to him? Why did he leave?" Mrs. Green's face grew serious. "His family was poor. His father died suddenly, and Thomas had to leave town to support his mother and brothers. He wanted to stay, but he couldn't. And Eleanor, she waited for him. For a long time. Until one day, the waiting turned into silence." Clara's throat tightened. She thought of the unopened letter. Maybe Thomas had tried to explain. Maybe her grandmother never saw it. That night, Clara sat in her small inn-room, the letter lying on the bed before her. Her hands hovered over it. Was this the letter, Grandma? The one that could have changed everything? Her heart pounded. She reached for the seal but stopped. "No, not yet. I need to know more. I need to hear their story before I open this." She placed the letter back into her bag, but as she lay down to sleep, tears rolled silently down her cheeks. She wasn't just uncovering her grandmother's past. She was beginning to feel the weight of a love that had been lost, a love that still echoed through time. And so Clara's search continued. She had names, faces, and fragments of truth. But the heart of the story, the real secret inside the last letter, remained unopened, waiting for the right moment. Clara had wandered through memories, spoken to those who remembered, and carried the weight of a promise never fulfilled. But the time for hesitation had passed. At last, she was ready to open the last letter. The rain returned that evening, falling gently against the window of her small inn-room. Clara sat at the wooden desk, the envelope lying before her. Her fingers traced the faded handwriting. "To Eleanor, for your eyes only." Clara whispered to herself, "Grandma, forgive me. I need to know." With trembling hands, she broke the seal. The paper inside was fragile, its edges crumbling slightly with age. She unfolded it carefully and began to read. "My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, it means I have failed to say goodbye in person. Life has pulled me away from you, and though I fought it with all my strength, I cannot change what has happened. My father is gone, my family depends on me, and I must leave this town. Not because I want to, but because love is sometimes sacrifice. I promised I would always be here for you, and though I am leaving, my heart remains with you. Please do not think I am abandoning you. Please do not think my love is weak. It is the strongest part of me. I will return, Eleanor, I swear it. And when I do, I will find you by the willow tree where we laughed and dreamed together. Wait for me if you can. But if life takes you in another direction, do not carry guilt. Live, love, and be happy. You are my forever, whether near or far. Always yours, Thomas." Clara's tears fell onto the paper, her voice breaking. "Oh, Grandma, you never saw this. You never knew." She pressed the letter to her chest, her heart aching not just for Eleanor and Thomas, but for all the years lost to silence. She whispered, "They loved each other so deeply, but life kept them apart." And she never even read his words. For the first time, Clara understood the depth of her grandmother's quiet sadness. Eleanor hadn't been cold or distant. She had been carrying the ghost of a promise unfulfilled. Clara wiped her tears and stood by the window, staring at the rain. No, this can't be where the story ends. Thomas deserves to know his letter never reached her. He deserves to know she loved him too. She clutched the fragile paper tightly. "I will find him. Even if he's old now, even if he's forgotten. He deserves to hear these words." And so, Clara made her choice. The letter had been read at last, but its journey was not over. It had one more destination, to the man who wrote it, the man who had waited in silence all these years. The past had spoken, and Clara was ready to carry its voice into the present. Clara had read the words. She had felt the love, the pain, and the promise that lived inside them. But a letter, once written, is not complete until it reaches its reader. Clara knew what she had to do. She would find Thomas. The next morning, Clara visited the town's records office. She explained her search, and the clerk, after some digging, gave her an address. "Thomas Reed," the clerk said, handing her a small slip of paper. "He moved to a nearby village years ago. Lives quietly now. Not many visitors." Clara thanked him, her heart racing. She boarded a bus and watched the countryside pass by. Green fields, old barns, winding rivers. The closer she got, the more she felt the weight of history pressing on her shoulders. At last, Clara arrived at a small, weathered cottage surrounded by rose bushes. The wooden fence was slightly crooked, and smoke rose gently from the chimney. She hesitated at the gate, her breath shallow. This is it. After all these years, I'm bringing him his words back. Clutching the letter, she walked up the path and knocked on the door. After a long pause, it creaked open. An elderly man stood in the doorway. His hair was white, his posture slightly bent, but his eyes still carried a quiet strength. "Yes?" he asked gently. Clara swallowed hard. "Are you Thomas Reed?" The man's brow furrowed in surprise. "I am. Do I know you?" Clara's voice shook. "No, but you knew my grandmother, Eleanor Whitfield." The old man's face softened instantly. His hand trembled as he gripped the doorframe. "Eleanor, I never thought I'd hear that name again." Clara held out the envelope, her eyes brimming with tears. This was yours." She never read it. "I found it after she passed away. I thought you should have it." Thomas's hands shook as he took the envelope. He opened it slowly, unfolding the fragile paper. His eyes scanned the words he had written so long ago. His lips trembled as he whispered aloud, "I will return, Eleanor. I swear it. Wait for me." A tear rolled down his cheek. She never knew. She never knew I loved her until the very end. Clara's voice broke softly. "She did love you, Thomas. She waited. Maybe she never saw this letter, but her heart carried you, always." Thomas covered his face with one hand, his shoulders shaking. For a long moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the sound of his quiet sobs. Finally, Thomas looked at Clara, his eyes glistening with both sorrow and peace. "Thank you, child, for bringing this to me. I thought my words were lost forever. But today it feels as if Eleanor has spoken to me one last time." Clara smiled through her tears. "I think she wanted this for you to know, for both of you to finally rest." Thomas reached out and gently squeezed her hand. "You've given an old man peace, and perhaps Eleanor too." Clara stepped out of the cottage later, the sky above glowing with the colors of evening. The air was cool, and a gentle breeze rustled the rose bushes. She whispered into the fading light, "It's done, Grandma. The letter has finally reached him." And so, the words of a promise long forgotten found their way home. A love story broken by time and silence was finally given its ending. Not in the way either had dreamed, but in a way that gave peace to both hearts. Clara had delivered the letter. The words Thomas had written decades ago were finally heard. The silence of the past had been broken, and in its place, peace had settled. The next morning, Clara walked slowly through the little village. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of blooming roses and rain-washed earth. She felt lighter somehow, as if her grandmother's spirit was walking beside her. She whispered, "Grandma, your story mattered. Your love mattered. And now it's finally complete." She passed by children laughing, couples walking hand in hand, and realized life was full of stories just like her grandmother's. Some spoken, some hidden, and some waiting in silence. Back at the inn, Clara sat by the window with her notebook. She opened it and began to write. The last letter was not just a message from Thomas to Eleanor. It was a reminder that love, once true, never fades. Promises may break, time may separate, but the words we leave behind carry pieces of our hearts. I have learned that silence can wound, but words, even late, can heal, and I will carry this lesson with me always. She paused, staring at the page, and smiled softly. Before leaving the village, Clara returned once more to Thomas's cottage. He sat outside in a wooden chair, the letter folded neatly in his pocket. "You're leaving?" he asked gently. Clara nodded. "Yes, but I'll never forget this. Thank you for loving her so deeply, even if life kept you apart." Thomas smiled, his eyes shining with age and wisdom. Love doesn't end when people part, child. It continues, in memories, in words, and sometimes in the hearts of those who come after. You've proven that. Clara bent down and hugged him, whispering, "Goodbye, Thomas." As the bus carried Clara away, she looked out at the fading countryside. She held her notebook tightly, thinking about everything she had seen and felt. And so Clara understood. The last letter was more than paper and ink. It was a bridge between past and present, between silence and truth. It taught her that words are powerful. They can heal or hurt, connect or divide, but once spoken or written, they live forever. And perhaps the greatest lesson of all, promises may fade, but love, in its truest form, finds its way back, even if it takes a lifetime. This was the last letter, a story of love, silence, and the healing power of words. May it remind you, dear listener, to treasure the voices of those you love, to speak before silence takes their place, and to know that even the simplest words can carry forever. Before you go, please consider subscribing. It helps this channel grow. It encourages me to keep sharing real stories like this, and honestly, it means the world to me.